All right, well, let's get into it. You have a really impressive resume and some really cool projects under your belt with things like 90 Day Fiance, Beachfront Bargains, House Hunters, Final Table, What Not to Wear. Seriously, the list goes on. And these are some huge shows. So, which of these shows was your favorite to work on it and why?
I would say my favorite was probably House Hunters International on HGTV. That was my longest running show. I was with them for almost 4 years. But the position that I sort of created for myself was really unique because I got to direct the show, produce the show, and I also cast the show, which meant that I could choose the locations and choose the people in every episode. So that was just like a dream come true. I remember one of my first few weeks there deciding that like I had to shoot an episode in Sri Lanka, and the network had never been there before. And I found this family and we did it. And a few months later we were there, and it was just like so exciting because even to be sent there would be amazing. But just the fact that I like had worked for it and earned it, like just made it all that much better. So yeah, I would say that show was definitely a high for me. And the company was so cool with like letting us just go wherever we wanted and really open with the people that we filmed with. So that definitely helped.
Well, if you're producing it, casting it, all that stuff, it's really yours. So those episodes were completely yours, run by you. So I'm sure that that holds a special place in your heart. And I know that from your website and from the conversations that we've had, you really have a passion for traveling. So I'm sure that, that was really rewarding for you to be able to go to some cool place that you'd always wanted to go. Talk to me a little bit about why you love traveling so much and how freelance work contributes to that passion for travel.
Yeah, I have just like many others, I've always loved to travel, and it's always been like something kind of extreme. Like it was never enough for me to just take a trip or like go for a long weekend. Like my trips were always just so long and so adventurous, and yeah, it was really cool when it went from like traveling kind of in my spare time to making it part of my everyday life and my job. So my job became about working with people from all over the world and like speaking different languages and working with different currencies and different cultures. So yeah, I mean that it's what I always wanted. So it was like a real treat for me.
With HGTV going internationally, it's like you really get to immerse yourself in the culture and work while you're doing it. A win-win for you, really. Going along with that, your job and your passions, I'm sure, have been affected by everything going on, especially with the travel restrictions and things like that. So could you just talk to us a little bit about how COVID has impacted the work that you've done, that you're doing in the future, and how are you really staying positive and motivated during these times?
Yeah, good question, because I feel like there is some confusion about like what's happening in production, and some people think like, "Oh, well, I heard that, this film is up and running and this TV series is back up and shooting." And while that can be true to some extent, I think, well, especially with what I do travel and hospitality mostly, right? So we're dealing with like airlines and hotels and restaurants and nightlife, and these industries were decimated in many parts of the world. So for me, that has been a huge challenge to overcome. And also just with every shoot, it's still a challenge. You have, a lot of crews and a lot of on-camera hosts and actors and whatnot traveling. So you have to deal with traveling crews during these times and having people, on the road together and flying and staying in hotels, and there's quarantines and there's testing. They're limiting crew sizes. So I think for everyone, it really is a challenge, and just learning how to shoot in this like new normal. But particularly for people like me who are specialized in, travel, lifestyle, hospitality, that, yeah, is pretty much non-existent. But there is hope. And I guess on the positive side, I've started thinking about, like at the core, what is it that I love so much about what I do? And it's really storytelling, right? Like it's telling stories about interesting people and interesting places. I live in New York, one of the most like fascinating places in the world. And so I've sort of decided to pivot right now to more documentary style work. So that, it might not be about traveling, but at least we're still telling interesting stories. So that's the goal.
It's great that you're able to pivot. And I think a lot of people are really figuring out what they love about their jobs, or if they don't love their jobs during this time. The idea that you understand your love for storytelling and are able to pivot it and continue to pursue it, I think shows how much you're passionate about what you do. And it takes real passion to produce things that are believable to audiences. With the passion, there's always going to be a next thing, a next step, because you're always going to be able to pivot and find the next big thing for yourself. So what's next for you?
I mean, if you had asked me this a year ago, maybe my answer would be different. For a lot of people, that's probably the case. But I would say what's next for me. So I'm actually launching my own business where I'm offering these documentaries for businesses and also for people directly. So it could be, it's called The Family Tree, and it could be about your family. It could be about your friend group. It could be about a sports league that you're a part of. It could be about a local business. The point behind it is really just to document stories and people's stories and history. And so my first project actually is with this really famous Ukrainian restaurant in New York called Veselka. And Veselka's been around since like the 1950s. And they just have this like incredible history. They're like a New York landmark. And so that's going to be one of my first kind of official documentaries, which I'm excited about.
What you're kind of doing is giving the other businesses like restaurants, which might be suffering during this time too, PR. Like you guys are helping each other, which is funny because that's actually what inspired this podcast. I was thinking, I feel kind of creatively drained, and I'm sure that a lot of people are feeling that way. What can I do that's mutually beneficial between me and other creatives? And I was like, a podcast where we just talk about our projects and what we have going on. And it's important to note, I talk on my podcast a lot about the entertainment industry and working on sets and things like that. But entertainment was not the only thing that was shut down, as many people know. I mean, the restaurant industry took a huge hit. So I'm sure that living in New York, there is plenty of restaurants to talk about, but it's great that you're highlighting those family-owned businesses that have been around forever, that are important to the community and might kind of be suffering during these times. Your job is a lot of travel. It's a lot of freelance. We've talked about that. What advice do you have for people who want to get into your industry right now during these crazy times?
I would say there's so many different routes you can take in this business, right? But I think a lot of it depends on, besides for your skill set and your experience, is really about like who you are as a person, whether you want something that's reliable and full-time and stable and health insurance and benefits and all those types of things, or if you are okay with the highs and lows of freelance and, kind of working for yourself, always hustling, working a lot of weekends, a lot of holidays, spending a lot of time on the road, traveling a lot. So I think it really depends like who you are in order to figure out which route you want to take. Honestly, I would say try both. And especially in the beginning, it's great to do the freelance thing because you can sort of see how it goes. And it's like not as much pressure. The stakes aren't as high when you're like, just starting out or a little bit earlier in your career. So I think that would be my advice. But I mean, there's pros and cons to both. It really, freelance is a roller coaster. And there's some major highs and major lows. So you just have to learn to be okay with that.
You have to be passionate about the stories that you're telling and flexible with the weird scheduling that happens with freelance. I think a lot of entertainment is that way. You have like periods of time where you have really consistent work and then there's nothing for a while.
You have to love it. I mean, there's no other reason to do this other than the passion.
Yeah, well said. I like to kind of throw a random question at you that's fun. I know that you're probably missing your traveling, and that's something that we're all feeling right now, I'm sure. So let's kind of take a trip down memory lane and talk about your favorite place that you've ever traveled and why.
I would say, I mean, I have so many like favorites, but just in terms of like an adventure, I would say one of my best memories was probably traveling to India.
Why is that?
India is just such a cool country. The culture is just so vibrant, like the colors, the scents, everything. Like there's elephants walking around that are like painted, and the outfits that everyone's wearing are just like really bright and fun. The food and like the spices, everything's just super colorful and interesting. So India will always be like a top favorite of mine. It's not for everyone, but I think either like you love it or you don't. And I was just one of those people. And you strike me as one of those people that would love it.
I think I would too. I love like trying new foods and doing stuff like that. I can't wait until I can travel again. I'm just so looking forward to that.
Me too. And they have lifted some of the quarantine rules in the States. So at least that'll help with like domestic travel a bit. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
is what it is right now.
Right.
Keep each other entertained by doing content like this.
Absolutely. That's the whole point of it. I just want to entertain some people and, spark that passion back. I think talking about past projects and what the future holds helps a lot of people who are struggling during these times to remember why they are in the business that they're in, especially with entertainment, which is the focus of the podcast. I always wrap up my interviews with something kind of fun. Is there anything that you want to share that's positive going on in the world right now?
Yeah, I mean, this weekend, not to get political, but with the results coming out on Saturday, I have just never seen people so happy, and I've never seen a celebration like that before. I don't know how it was in LA, but I did see some photos and some videos on social media. But it was just like a weekend of pure joy for a lot of people in New York and people all over the country, and all over the world. I would imagine just like the reactions and the like unity that it brought to everyone was really great. Everyone just kind of like let loose for the day. And that was really nice. And it was also 75 degrees in New York. And it's November and I'm wearing a tank top. So yeah, that definitely helped.
It was crazy here. I live right next to Hollywood Boulevard, and you would have thought that it was Pride. Like everybody was out. Celebrities were out acting like normal people, just hanging out with everybody, holding up their signs and things like that. It was really awesome to see. And I did feel unified, especially living out here. I mean, LA specifically, but California in general is Democratic. So a ton of people had really good reactions to the results of the new president being elected. I'm so glad you could come on and give your advice and tell my listeners why freelance is amazing.
Well, thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Of course. Yeah. Come back sometime soon.
I would love that.